Welcome everyone. Today we have our another new episode, our 406 episode, and we have our world famous speaker for today's discussion. We have Mr. David Schumacher, Mr. Tom Rose. I'm sure Tom Rose has many interesting story from Africa. Uh, we have Professor David Smith, Professor Robs, and Dr. Dan. Thank you, Dr. Dan, for joining today's session. I want to start from Professor David Schumacher. We want to discuss about social television. So how you want to analyze today's topic.
Mute.
You're muted.
Wait a minute, are we talking to, I apologize.
Yes, I'll start again. I was having a great conversation with myself. This is a great topic and one that I've had some fun with already, social television. I brought a few friends along, as you can see in the background, to help me discuss this. I'm trying to decide whether they're a bit distracted or whether they're a bit engaged with what's going on. No, seriously, one of my first experiences with this was pretty much ad hoc. I like sports like many people do. And my partner, Susan, is from Auckland, New Zealand. So I've been indoctrinated into the world of rugby, and we watch rugby online. And one night, we're watching rugby out of Auckland, New Zealand, at the same game that Susan's brother is physically at. And we're talking to him over social media about the game. He's there live and in person. And then pops into the conversation is one of Susan's daughters who lives in Auckland and is watching the game on television. And then enters another daughter who's on a business trip in China. And she's watching the game from China. So we're all talking about the game. We're all involved in the game. We're all very focused on what's going on. Obviously, what I'm trying to demonstrate here is that you can have a worldwide audience. It used to be that I would sit in the same living room of someone's house and we would sit and we would watch maybe like American football games, championship games, something like that. And we would talk about it. We'd be focused on the game. We would be highly engaged in what was going on. We'd make fun of some of the commercials and so forth that would come on, but we would be paying attention to them as well. It's a whole interactive experience. Now we can do the same thing, except we can do it internationally. And we can do that very easily. And there's a lot of benefits besides just the fun. If you're an advertiser, for example, you have more engagement with the audience because the audience is discussing all the different aspects of what's going on, including the commercial aspect of what's going on. So a side business that I run, I've been retooling some of my advertising, and I was thinking about this as I was going through how important it is that you have a consistent message if you were advertising on television, which I don't, but I do advertise on social media and in other platforms. And people are mixing and matching these platforms together, and it's very important that they all tell the same story, that they all create the same kind of message. But it doesn't even have to be a group of people to get that engagement. The World Series, American Major League Baseball right now is going through their championship series. And it's in the really interesting aspect. For those that aren't aware, it's a series of up to 7 games. The first team that wins 4 of those 7 games is the reigning champion for a year. So after about game 3 or 4, television audience picks up greatly. So people will watch, and I can watch as I did like with the rugby game and have social media conversations with others, but I can also have immersive conversations with myself, or I'm sitting there watching the game and I have a tablet open and I'm checking stats on the team and I'm checking to refresh my memory what happened in previous innings. And there's advertising built all around this. There's advertising built on the screen. So there's a lot of commercial aspects back and forth to draw this in, but it's fun and it's engaging. And there's even a cognitive product called the halo effect, which means that people that are this immersed and doing this through as many senses as possible become very emotionally attached to what's going on. So that's good for the product if you're selling a television show or you're selling a sporting event, but it's also good for advertisers, and it also makes people like me who watch this feel good, and they're probably more inclined to come back and get more. Now, putting my transhumanist hat on, I look forward into the future, and I look forward to the metaverse, and I hope to be able to sit around the table with every one of you and watch our favorite sporting event, and being able to quibble over who's the best player and who's not, and so forth. So it's going to be a fun time moving forward. Thank you, Sharif. That's my introduction.
Thank you, Mr. David Schumacher, Mr. Tom Rose. How you want to, because you are from media, so I think you can give a very interesting guideline for our audience, especially for social television. And beside that, we are really interested to know more about your initiative in Africa with WTEF. I saw that with your team you did excellent work. So yeah, so what do you want to share with us?
Yeah, we spent last week in South Africa doing site inspections to figure out where we're going to have our conference in the spring. Saw a few properties and had some great meetings with the Tourist Bureau government there. And it's just very exciting. That's why I look so tired, as you mentioned earlier. I'm still kind of jet lagged, but yeah, it's very exciting. There's a lot going on. We'll talk more about it as we just come back, and so we're kind of briefing the team and everything now, and making our decision. And so yeah, we'll have a lot to say about that very soon. As far as social television, it seems like a natural, obvious outcrop. And when I was in radio, we went through that. When radio, this mature industry, suddenly had to become a visual medium with the internet coming on board, and there's a lot of pros and cons on both sides. Obviously, most of the pros are for the product and for the corporations, but there's some really good pros for, I think, this digital native generation. I think it fosters that kind of hive mind. Young people like to share, and they feel more secure the more groups and the more interactions they have, the bigger groups they have. And so it really fosters that sort of hive mind and allows them to share. There's a lot of pros for the product in that they have analytics now, and their advertisers can have analytics on the product placement in shows. It's just very fine-tuned, parsed data that they can look at now and make decisions and forecast. And it's just a very, as far as the product goes, it's a very complex thing, but it also offers a lot of very powerful tools for corporations and the product to use. And it also allows them to actually see trends. Like there's one case, I can't remember what the show it was, but they assumed that this one character would have all of this attention once they premiered the show, and they prepared all of these social assets to support that. And then they found that another character got a lot more tweets or got a lot more attention, and so they had to shift kind of midstream toward focusing on social assets for that particular character. And so it offers a lot of real-time valuable information that is good for both the product and the consumer. And yeah, this kind of reminds me of back in the day in the late 90s with the V chip that was introduced into television. There's been a little regulatory creep with that invention, but it's just a very positive, complex benefit for products, and it has some halo effect, as David was saying, for people, for human beings. I think particularly for young people, digital natives, it's a whole different mindset, and it really caters to that. And so the trend lines have really converged well, I think, with those two things.
Thank you, Mr. Tom Rose. Professor David Smith.
The whole concept of social television to me is a very interesting one, because the concept actually started of people writing science fiction even before television was television. And I find that a very interesting construct to see where we are today with it, and how its impact is changing and going together. The first really mention of something like social television is it was called a telephonescope way back in the early 1900s, and uh, it's been used many different ways. You can see concepts of it in many of the science fiction programs and things before we had the pieces together to make it work today. Um, you know, David and Tom have done a great job of beginning to talk about some of its applications and how it can be used there. But I think some of the places where we're going to see the concept of taking the television content, the content, and others as we go towards the now popular and press metaverse, and see how those pieces coming together is it will have the potential to begin to look at how we have public dialogue as we get to topics out of pure entertainment. Uh, One of the early experiments in that is something actually called social television network, where their aim was to use social television with government bodies to encourage real-time dialogue around the issues being discussed. And we've seen Twitter and others substitute for vocal as things. I cannot even view a public debate now without my Twitter feed blowing up with people commenting on it. So we're seeing more and more of this movement towards a social television concept. And it's actually taking government and moving government more from being reactive more to being able to be proactive as it gets more input of constituencies, stakeholders, and others into the process. The same way, one of the programs that social television really impacted was the program with the different versions around the world called The Voice. And that particular show was deluged in every country it was by a social television construct with the people voting, giving their opinions, and having rich dialogue about the contestants. So it's one that I think we'll see more of as we go there, and as the infrastructure improves to let us do it. We're at the point where we're going to see producers begin to work that into their campaign, just like advertising agencies now are beginning to work social television into their marketing and advertising plans for programs and even products that they advertise within the programs where this is an active process. So, I love seeing the fusion that's happening because it really is a fusion of all these different things coming together to produce an outcome that hopefully is favorable, even though once again it does open its head to privacy concerns and other things like that. But to me, it's one that we should track and really keep aware of.
Thank you. Professor Rob.
Morning. And it is still way too early. So social television, it provides a lot of potential. The ability to connect to an audience that's watching a program real time is something that you could do in plays, but not something we've traditionally been able to do in television. Even in through the 1990s, we might have gotten together at the water cooler to talk about the latest Seinfeld episode, but that was never communicated back to the producers of the show or the directors or the writers of the show. Of those conversations that they occurred and didn't carry back probably only occurred in the studio itself. There was no broad effort to carry them back. And you could survey people after the fact, but after the fact, the memory becomes dull and the survey results become biased by time. This social television provides us with a way to get feedback from a program real time. If the conversations are monitored, And if you're using social media, they are undoubtedly monitored as you're making them. So this allows for a feedback loop that hasn't been fully utilized yet. Predominantly because it still takes time to produce a television program. So you can get feedback, but by the time you apply that feedback, weeks, if not months, have gone by and might actually not even show up the following season. As we move to concepts like the metaverse, where we'll be able to create programming in real time, or even if we look at some of the reality TV that is done live action, most of you probably realize that reality TV today is largely scripted. It's not reality TV at all. But when you go back to a concept of being able to do things live action, then there is a possibility of being able to take that feedback real time and alter the content to address what the audience is finding interesting. And if you build in product, to be able to highlight product in a more effective fashion. So for instance, a lot of companies pay a lot of money to do product placement in programs, but how effective is that placement? Did people really look at it? And if they're not looking at it, there's no way right now to fix the problem except in the next production of whatever thing that you've done before. You can't do it real time, but we could. With the metaverse, we could create programs that get altered real time, put product placement in place. And we've already seen the adoption of some of this technology. If you watch, for instance, if you watch sports and you watch on the field, the signs that are on the field, they vary for every geography. Those are altered depending on the audience. It looks to you like they're regular banners, but they're not. They're digital banners that are put up to look like real banners, and they reflect the market that you're in. Well, now imagine you could do that real time, and you could make it granular. With streaming, there's that possibility that you could actually put in particular ads for particular audiences in the same geography, just by subsegmenting the feeds. And so this provides an opportunity for the future as we develop these technologies to provide highly customized ads for individuals, much like we have cookies right now, and where you go to another site. If you were looking, I just noticed this today, I was looking at a piece of exercise equipment, and now every place I go, I see ads for that exercise equipment because the site knows I looked at it before, cookies track me, and they provide those ads wherever I've gone. Well, TV can't compete with that now, but with social television, it could in the future provide that same kind of thing. If I'm interested in buying something, the TV ads could reinforce that buying behavior and drive me to a purchase much more aggressively. As we saw with Facebook, there's a downside with this as well. Once you start manipulating people at scale, you can create problems. The Facebook papers have showcased that you can make bad decisions with regard to this technology, change hearts and minds, and create violence where it didn't exist before. And so this is probably going to require a certain amount of regulation to make sure this stuff is used efficiently, effectively, and safely. We certainly wouldn't want a drug that was doing harm widely broadcast out, so people are suddenly taking this drug for an illness where it not only doesn't work, but did harm, could cause deaths or illnesses. So oversight, and this is going to be important because it's pretty subtle. If you're now focusing on what I now believe, and you're putting in things in the program I'm watching, and it's done subtly enough where I don't know what's happening, it could change how I view things. And if it changed how I view things to make me more violent, or make me feel like I needed to overrun a government or attack a particular racial group, that could be problematic. So in the end, it's got a lot of potential, but like any technology, if it was used poorly, it could do a lot of harm. It probably justifies the fact that we should have regulators to begin looking at this before we get to the point where the problem exists and that we have to undo a bunch of stuff that's been done.
Thank you, Professor Rao, for your excellent analysis. But I want to add another interesting things, because according to my commitment, like we are connecting with COP26, one of our honorable speakers and board of advisor, Mr. Paul. Right now he is in COP26, and this is the value of social televisions. We are connecting everywhere, and it's actually create a very big impact, especially COP26. We are observing all of the countries, prime minister, president, largest corporations, many people actually visiting right now in COP26. But I want to know from Mr. Paul, what's going on inside COP26? What is the real commitment we are getting from the global leaders?
Well, I hope you can hear me. The background noise is quite loud. I'm in a session where there's many exhibitors, so each different booth or pavilion. And there's also very specific sites. Like I was just at a talk by Jason Box, who's one of the top ice scientists on. He does all of his research on Greenland and looks at the melt rates from that. And I think it was the Japanese premier that came out of a room and there was a crowd of media around him and people. So, you bump into lots of different people. At the last COP, Greta, wherever she went, she was like a rock star there. And, with media, everybody's got their smartphone and, somebody just texts, it just needs one person to see somebody like Greta and say, okay, Greta's in the such and such a room. And then, within seconds, like literally in less than a minute, there could be a huge horde of media and people crowding there and stuff. I mean, that's one of the, things with social media. Stuff can happen instantly, sort of real time. So, the COP, as the world leaders, met yesterday, and I think they're meeting today, and they've made some promises about reducing forests stopping forests globally being cut down, and there's other things that they're talking about. Personally, I've done 2 press conferences. One of them both on Sunday. One of them was on methane and methane in the Arctic and the threats from that. And the second one I called extreme weather chaos in the climate casino. The idea that, depending on where you live, there's a risk of, you could lose your house, you could lose your business, you could lose your entire town, for example, depending on what the event is. Just look at the example of Paradise, California, or Lytton, British Columbia, or, if you're in a city that gets the superstorms, the very powerful, hurricanes or typhoons or cyclones, whichever part of the world you're in, you call them something different, but those creating storm surges and taking out, flooding cities, entire cities, like the scale of the, we've clearly destabilized the climate, and all weather happens within our climate system, and there's no sense in really talking about a 1 in 100 year or 1 in 1,000 year event, because when you get 3 1 in 1,000 year floods, in the matter of 3 or 5 or 10 years, there's obviously a big problem. The statistics, the statistics of weather have completely changed. And as far as whether the conference, the only success I see, it's very, very simple for the conference. Greenhouse gases, CO2 levels keep rising. In fact, they're rising faster than, they're rising exponentially. So they're rising more and more each year. And the fossil fuel subsidies are actually, if you look at what world leaders have promised on fossil fuel subsidies, and many of them have said they would phase out fossil fuel subsidies, and they made those promises in 2009, actually, many countries. But you have to look carefully, because there's a lot of the subsidies for the fossil fuel industry are kind of hidden or indirect. So there's direct subsidies that are actually decreasing slightly, projected to the next 5 years, say, but the indirect ones are increasing rapidly. So the net effect is that the subsidies of the fossil fuel companies are still on a trajectory upward. And you can look at the International Energy Agency reports and see that very clearly. So unless leaders of countries around the world actually take action and reduce those fossil fuel subsidies and get rid of them, phase them out, then and as long as the CO2 levels keep rising at ever increasing rates and don't stabilize and then decrease, we're not. What we do is insignificant. It's not going to address the problem.
Excellent. One thing, Mr. Paul, I just want to know, because previously I'm observing different global leaders' commitment, because this time they are more serious I think anyway there is an internet issues. He will join again. Anyway, so this is very interesting because COP26 also valuable for the global community for solving this climate change, and definitely we are discussing about social televisions. This is one of the valuable things that we can connect everywhere. We can connect all of the important person, then the people and the places. Mr. Paul, I have just another questions to you. I know that you are inside the conference. Like, do you believe that at present what we get from the global leaders, like they are committing that okay, they can solve this climate change related things, and they will go for different kind of like agreements? Do you think practically is it possible practically that different corporations and the different countries they will work together to solve these climate change related issues? Mr. Paul, can you hear me?
Okay, I'm gonna try. My video feed is cutting in, so I'm gonna do something for a bit, see if I can just make it better. So just hang on about 20 seconds.
Okay. So no problem. Mr. Dan, I think you joined in World Talent Economy Forum. This is your first time. So what you want to add to this discussion?
Well, we're in this interesting time with this infinite content. Anywhere in the world, you can watch any TV station you want now. What I've been working on.
Can you hear me?
Whoops.
Yes, Mr. Paul.
You want to
yes.
Paul?
Yeah.
Yes.
You can hear me now. Okay. It should be better. I find that the Wi-Fi inside the conference is very sporadic, depending on what's happening. With if there's something happening, if Greta appears and then everybody's trying to tweet it out or something, it kind of swamps the bandwidth at the conference, I'm finding. So I just went on to phone signal for a bit. And okay, so basically, you were saying, is anything going to get done at the conference? The leaders, the climate change is with us. Right, it's affecting everything, and leaders only have so much power. We got no single leader can change things themselves. They have to collectively make strong agreements. And I think what I'm trying to emphasize in all of my press conferences, I have daily press conferences. There wasn't one today, and there's not one tomorrow, because all of the press rooms were basically taken from the non-governmental organizations because the world leaders are here and they needed the space. So all of the sessions were actually canceled, and this was at the very last minute. So I was going to be having sessions on those days, but it restarts again tomorrow. But basically, what I'm trying to emphasize is that why it's insanity that world leaders are so scared of other countries and leaders of other countries, because the threat is there. It's like all of the weapons are pointed in the wrong direction, right? The abrupt climate system change is coming up right behind the world leaders, and it's destroying entire cities. Flooding out entire cities, or a city will burn down from a wildfire, or the infrastructure will be completely taken out, in major cities from extreme weather events that are directly from climate system change and disruption. And then it costs billions of dollars to repair these. I mean, imagine, imagine another country taking out one of your cities and what the response would be of the government. Right, you could start a war, but yet when climate does it, it's not. It doesn't have the same impact to world leaders, and I think that's going to change soon, because with the climate disruptions that we have in the near-term future, namely the complete loss of Arctic sea ice at the end of the summer, say within 5 to 10 years, and then once that happens, I fully expect that extreme weather events around the world will take out a big chunk of global food supply. So prices will go way up, and we'll have famine and global food shortages. So I'm really recommending and talking to all of the people in the U.S. Policy teams and stuff here. I'm trying to find out. I've got a lot of networks. I'm trying to find these people and say, look, you've got to start thinking that, the enemy is not other countries. You don't need to spend 700, 800 billion per year in a U.S. military budget to defend yourself against other countries. The threat is coming up right back behind you and destroying your country, and it's going to bankrupt you, and that's abrupt climate change. So why don't you just take that money that you're putting in the military and divert it to, instead of the military industrial complex, the climate industrial complex or whatever, and use that money to retool to renewables, to slash fossil fuel emissions, but also to remove carbon from the atmosphere, and perhaps even cool the planet with some of these techniques like marine cloud brightening or MIR, which is using mirrors on Earth, or like we've got to pull out all the stops. I mean, we're being destroyed by something that we're not even fighting against, really, because we're not. I mean, as long as the CO2 emissions are going up and the fossil fuel subsidies are there, anything we do and say is just talk.
Thank you, Mr. Paul, for your valuable discussions. Sorry, Dr. Dan, actually I have to give opportunity to Mr. Paul because he is from conference, so I'm sorry about that.
Yes, and I'm sorry. I'm glad I managed to appear, but I can't stay on the call. So I just wanted to make an appearance and say hi to everybody. But I had to leave a session, and there's a session I do have to be in. So I want to thank you all.
Thank you.
And thanks for having me, Sharif.
Thank you, Mr. Paul, for
so
joining.
I'm sure I can do this some other days. I mean, I'm here. The conference is on for 2 weeks, so I'll try to connect with you and your group people when I get the opportunity.
Definitely, I regularly will communicate with you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Paul.
Okay, thanks.
Thank
Goodbye,
you for your
everybody.
update. Thank you, Mr. Thank you for your update.
Goodbye.
Thank you. Yes, Dr. Dan. Yes.
Hi, David and David Kelly there. I talked to you guys a little bit. I'm still working away on my little project, but it intersects with all this stuff. You have infinite information on the internet. Well, what's good? And how do you rate that? In real time, how can you, if you have 1,000 or 10,000 or 1 million people watching something, where were the best parts? And that's where my system comes in as a visualization, a visual feedback on whatever it is they have going on here. Can I...
Yes. You want to share any presentation?
Yes, let me see. So this is the dead simple, can't believe no one thought of it before. Red, I hate it. Green, neutral. Purple, I love it. But imagine watching a sports game and what kind of response you get. This is a controversy. This is something maybe someone got a score, and this is the team that got scored on. This is the team that made the score. You can watch the public opinion as the game's being played, or as someone is talking. You can watch visually the response. You can watch the response to rhetoric. If you're a politician, you can talk. You can see the way people think about what you're talking about. Real time, as you're talking. You can see where you're dividing people. You can see where you're resonating with what people have to say. Works in any language, so you can have someone in India talking about something. If it makes sense and everybody likes it, well, who's the audience? Are they scientists? Is it just the general public, or are you talking to just a group of scientists? Specifically climate change. Someone comes up with an idea, and you have this closed group of some of the best scientists. Well, what did they really like? And if it's a video stream, you could have that running real time underneath, take the votes, see the sentiment of the people that are there. And this is where AI comes in. It could identify where are those points where there was a lot of resonance, positive. Where was it controversial? Where are those parts where people are fighting about stuff? Where is it where they all agree? At that point, you have an index of quality of what what is high quality in this group of people, right down to geolocation. David, you're talking about advertising. You get ads for stuff that you don't want. Why is that? Just because you look something up, now you're getting ads for it? If you respond negative to that, well, that's for the advertisers to know, well, don't advertise this to this guy because he doesn't like that. Maybe his neighbor does, but he doesn't. It goes all through the whole gamut of human experience there, right? To politics, to sports teams. It's the same system. So you have a single codification of what people like, what they don't like, regardless of language. So I'd like to see this as as we're talking now, someone makes a good point, make a highlight. Hey, this is a really good point this guy made. So you have, as you have this endless stream of information that's just infinite, there's no end to it. Where are the purple parts? Where are the red parts? Maybe this is something dangerous, what this person is saying. Government needs to worry about people that are fighting against the system that don't like what's going on. Sometimes that's good, sometimes it's bad. Well, here are your hot spots. Here are the solutions. So we're working on this right now, getting this integrated, but I'd love to talk to you guys further as far as Tom Ross. I know that you're into the AI world. Have your AI watch this. What was the best show on TV? Well, it was the one that everybody liked. And that's not, that goes for every single thing on the internet. And at the bottom end, you have a personalization of, well, what do you correspond with? Oh, I like this, but I don't like that. Now there's an index to sort that.
That's great.
Give it to Netflix. Netflix, what's the best thing on Netflix? Depends on who you are. Now you have an organization tool.
For me, I think the best part of that is the negative readings. So the algorithm won't just feed you stuff because you tipped your toe into something.
Right.
And now that's very important, I think, to pick up those nuances so it can be more sophisticated and give you really solid information that you're interested in.
Yeah, super high resolution visual demonstration of opinion.
One question is, what's the input? How are people being read?
Well, that's where it's just the color bar. You pick a color, any color. As you're watching the TV, it could be on your cell phone.
Okay.
A tweet comes up. Hey, this is a good tweet. High resolution response.
Selecting a color, basically.
Yep. Pick a color. Do you like it or not? How much?
That's great.
So, but that's where I'm. David Kelly, I've talked to you a little bit about it there. You had your hesitations there, but it works in any language. Works on Mars too once we get there. So it's we've got a electromagnetic spectrum. It's the only part the government can't tax, right? So let's use it.
Thank you, Mr. David Kelly.
Yes.
Yes, we are discussing about social television. So if you want to add any new innovations and solution for our audience. Besides that, I think our audience has few interest about climate change. Even we are trying to get some sort of information from COP26. And from your side, if you want to just integrate this social television. Yes.
Well, honestly, I had to look up what social television was when I started listening to you guys. And I think it's really something that hasn't really been possible until the internet, when you can stream and have this kind of interactivity built into shows. I haven't really seen an extremely successful integration of social television on like TV, although I've seen a number of trials. Like right now, AMC Theater is trying to do this interactive thing with phones in the theaters right before movies, for example, where people have this interactive experience. But I don't really see it working in a large scale, or at least they haven't found a way to drive really enough adoption. I think I think things like that guy was just showing could work. I think my hesitation, as he mentioned, is the fact that he ignores the design community, and people have tried things like this, and there's emotions tied to colors already, and if you don't align with human expectation, you're going to struggle with adoption. And I think that's really the only problem with the scheme he was using. But yeah, I think social television will be more and more a thing as traditional TV moves away from just cable. But I don't think it's there yet.
Thank you. Madam Tamanna, can you hear me? Yes.
Yeah. So briefly, I had some points in my mind when I just heard about social television, and it's largely like the whole concept of global civil society came into picture during the 1990s. So from materialistic vision, the vision shifted towards making democracy more transparent, more open, and more uh, liable to be accepted by oppressed and marginalized classes. So yeah, so with the concept of human rights, cultural rights, etc., came into picture. Now, with the development of coming up of multimedia media and social media, especially like Twitter and Facebook, etc., what was pinpoint which I would like to pinpoint at would be that and there would be, like, I look at three issues basically. Firstly, whenever a democracy had an election, so people were, their opinion and their pulses were touched by Twitter and Facebook rather than the political pundits. So that was a very important point because people, like politicians, started taking it seriously. That like people are going to get influenced by this particular aspect, and we need to usher in democracy in a much better way and present ourselves. They have cells, etc., which are looking at the profile of their major leaders, etc., and how many people are following them, etc., etc. So yeah, this point. Then secondly, uh, uh, what I would look at, the second point about politics would be that people are in, like during the Putin and Trump elections. We have seen that how people were saying that like Trump was being voted to victory by Putin's work. So I guess it's important to that level. If another country can influence you, it happened in India as well. We were being told that by media people, etc., newspapers, that this is what is happening, and like different parties are, BJP is trying to do it to Congress, and the Congress is trying to do it to the BJP. They have their own cells. So yeah, and then like as far as women are concerned, or other oppressed classes are concerned, for example, 1960s, Betty Friedan said that women were in media were represented as stupid and extremely silly. So like even now, for example, in India, I don't know how it is in other countries, but in India it is still, women are shown to be very homely. She might pick up a profession, but the minute she gets married, she leave it. She is in a traditional attire, even if it's totally not working with the people's way of living in the real sense. So I guess these things are there, and and Twitter discusses these. So the ratings keep coming up and down based on these. Many of them are extremely silly serials, soaps, and like so yeah. So what I was trying to say was that Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, etc., are extremely TikTok. These things have influenced people to a certain extent, and I guess if we use it to the best possible way, rather than negatively, we portray people positively. For example, like middle class are shown in a certain way, poor people in a certain way. So how will people progress if people are shown in such derogatory way? So we need to have these channels. They have their own problems, but the best part about them is that they are transparent and they can be questioned very easily. And yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am. Mr. Donald, thank you for joining today. What you want to add for this social television?
I can't really know what to add since I got here late and don't know what other people said. But probably at the risk of repeating what everyone else has said. It looks like it's a gigantic industry. It's something that's going to starting. It's available right now. So right now, if you go to Facebook or Twitter or things like that, they have watch parties where you can all watch shows together with other people and discuss them. Somebody just invited me to join I don't even remember the name of it, but it's a place where you can get together and have discussion groups where they're audio. So you can basically now create situations where everyone can gather together and watch something together and discuss it. That's around right now. I see it's a wonderful way to market to people. I think it's a wonderful way to basically, like, if you've got political things that you want to sell, you're trying to basically, brainwash people and give them misinformation and create an alternative universe that you want to do. It's being done very, very effectively just with Facebook and Twitter now, and other kinds of things. I mean, the plus side is I absolutely love TikTok, and I watch TikTok. It's my guilty pleasure. I have to set myself, okay, I'm going to stop after an hour, because the creators on TikTok are just brilliant. I'll just see one absolutely brilliant people. It must take them a day to make those 3-minute TikToks. They're just unbelievable, and so many of them are incredibly informative. My wife actually came across one that was from a Brazilian village, where this woman in Brazil who was indigenous their group lived in traditional way. They wore traditional clothes and did all the traditional things, but she had TikTok. And so she went and documented the way that they lived and the lives that they lived. And things like that are just, wow. I mean, it's just so cool to be able to experience the worlds of other people. And, that's the plus side to it. I think I don't, even right now, what happens on TikTok is that somebody will get up and they'll do like a doctor, like from Harvard, who's an epidemiologist, will start explaining how the COVID vaccines work. And he'll have these wonderful 3-minute videos that he's, as I said, spent days creating, that show exactly how mRNA vaccines work. And what happens is people who are against vaccines create these lists where they target somebody like this and they report him for violations of terms of service violations. And the algorithms don't really have time to check everybody right away. So what the algorithms do is, if somebody gets massively reported for terms of service violations, they just cut them off until they can figure out what's going on. So what they do is they target people they don't like and report them for terms of service violations, get them kicked off. They've been doing this on Twitter and Facebook and everything for a long time. So on the one hand, it opens up the ability for us to have huge new worlds. But on the other hand, it's really complicated how we're going to be able to make it be fair and egalitarian for everybody. It's the same problem we've been facing on steroids. So that's what I think about it right now.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Donald. This is actually excellent session because different speakers bringing their different idea, and that is the area actually World Talent Economy Forum working. We are bringing politicians, corporations, academy in the same table, and we are discussing. We want to already we are engaging today with the COP26. Before that, we engaged with Dubai Expo, and we are also convincing the politicians and the corporations and the government, if we can work together, if we can develop a better solution together, maybe we can solve many problems. And definitely we have to work these developed nations and developing nations together, and by this way we can solve many problems. So World Talent Economy Forum, always we focus on talent because talent is everywhere. I'm really happy when I see Mr. Tom visiting Africa and working for the developing the like he's actually working for the talent communities. On the other hand, all of our speaker has very beautiful background story, and all of them actually try to engage with the global communities. So World Talent Economy Forums, we are engaging with developing nations, especially in Asia Pacific. We have strong commitment to the local ecosystem that we will find out better solution, better ecosystem for them. Already hundreds of university, government bodies and corporations, they are already supporting World Talent Economy Forum, and all of the achievement we get because of our excellent speakers, because speakers long time they are supporting us. So that's why now we are getting our solutions. So we need more of your supports. We are developing startup village concept in developing nations. We are developing universities and different kind of solutions with the help of governments. So if we work together, I'm sure we can solve millions of people problem. Open dialogue is the platform where we can start and we can move to the real world projects. So thank you everyone for joining today's session. I directly want to go for the concluding remarks. I want to start from Mr. David Schumacher.
Yeah, thank you, Sharif. Wow, another great show. Hey, I just have one thing to say here at the end. You know, we talked about some of the great benefits. I talked about how I used it a little bit, and we talked, I think, very appropriately about some of the problems that come with it. I really appreciate what Donald had to say about the attacks against people, terms of service attacks, I guess I might call them. But when I think of social media, my parting comment is when I think of social media, cute dog and pet pictures are probably the biggest thing out there. When Donald mentioned TikTok, Susan is obsessed with watching things about cute dogs and pets and so forth on TikTok. So imagine this. We get together to watch the Westminster Kennel Club dog show, probably the most well-known dog show of all, already in the United States gets national broadcast. And we all get out our tablets and our phones, and we can vote for the cutest dogs that are there. We can get advertisement. I own a dog. I can get advertisement for the best dog feed training and so forth, and have this totally immersive, cute dog experience. So I want to leave on a warm and fuzzy note today. That's my parting comments.
Thank you, Mr. Tom Rose.
Yeah, I think this is it's a positive thing in general, in that it allows us to be more social and interact, especially digital natives, young people who love to share and love being a part of a large group. And so it's a very positive thing in that way. We should also be careful, because although it's good for news in that they can provide live tweets, but they're still aggregated, they're still curated, these tweets. So you got millions of people tweeting about a thing, but there could still be a gatekeeper that decides which tweets get through. So but in general, just like she was saying, it's important to balance the monetary motivations of some of these corporations and the algorithms and all this, but really inject the human side of things and to project positive images of people and fight back against some of these negative algorithms, or even these negative motivations, nefarious motivations that some folks may have. And so we're not going to stop it. It's on the way. It's here. It's only going to exponentially grow. And so it's really important that we not be in denial, and we really strive to, like David was saying, I have a few subscriptions to some really cute animal channels to take me away from things, and it's important to do that. And TikTok, I've weaned myself off of TikTok. My first experience with it, so many people are so funny. I mean, there's so many creative people out there. It was just amazing to watch. I weaned myself off of it now, so now a few times a week I'll just hit it once and use it like a magic 8-ball, and whatever video comes up on my For You page, I'll take as a sign, or I'll take as a piece of information for me. But I think it's all positive if we can keep the motivation human and look out for those monetary algorithms, and those types of motivations. But I think in general it's going to be a good thing if we can balance those.
Thank you, Mr.
That's all I have to say about that.
David Smith.
To me, social television is interesting because digital convergence has made it possible. And digital convergence is also what's going to stretch it too, and maybe change the concept of social television. I liked Tom's comment about the generational approach and how that can have an impact here. I watch my son, his friends, my girlfriend's kids, and they watch most of their television on their mobile devices. Even though they have a perfectly big television screen in front of them, they prefer their mobile device. And when you take television and put it on a touch screen and make it personally, the ability to interact more on the social context goes up because you can interact in real time. I almost expect to see television programs that are aiming towards social television have the same type of icons we see in blogs and web posts today. Do I want to comment this on Twitter? Do I want to comment on it in Facebook? Do I want to do a Snapchat of this? And I can see that going as this further evolves and going forward. But to me, the concept of social television, as you go to this portable, personalized screen, is going to do nothing but increase. So, great topic. Sharif, thank you for letting me be part of it.
Thank you, Professor. Professor Rob.
Well, so the potential of social television hasn't really been explored and won't be explored until we start integrating the social aspects with the television product. One of the things we learned about during the pandemic was that people that were doing live TV had a real problem once they lost their audience, because that audience gave them the feedback they needed to actually perform well on the camera stage. Very different if you're doing recorded programming, but when you're used to doing live programming, losing that audience is kind of critical. And figuring out a way to tie this social television aspect into providing real-time feedback to live performers is going to be a critical step to allowing us to move from in-person to home and home back to in-person again, as we undoubtedly will during this succeeding months as this pandemic ramps up and down, and as other pandemics and problems ramp up and down. It's going to give us a lot more flexibility in how to keep people safe and a lot more flexibility in how to do programming. It's also a great opportunity for artificial intelligence, because at some point we'll be able to emulate the people that aren't there and have them show up digitally as opposed to in person, and therefore allow us to maintain our audience, even if our audience isn't with us at the moment. A lot of improvements, a lot going on in the future, and it's going to be a wonderful ride. Thank you very much, Sharif.
Thank you. Professor David Kelly, what's your concluding remarks?
So I think just on the topic of social television, it'll be interesting to see how it evolves. I've seen a lot of what we used to call architectural experiences, like the Nike touch wall and things like that I think we'll see digital experiences like that more, but I don't think the industry is really settled on how that'll come about, and so there hasn't been in a single, I guess, technique to be that's been adopted at scale, and I think it'll be interesting to see how it evolves. I don't know that I'm an expert in the social element of this, and that's why for me it'll be interesting to see it evolve. But yeah, it's certainly coming.
Thank you, madam. Yes, Tamanna.
So
Yes.
yes, I can, sure. So my concluding remarks would be like, most probably how much possible we should make the technology simpler, so that in the developing world, people who are living, who are in the poverty, below the poverty line, are even able to access it. And apart from that, students, for example, when we teach them, they lose interest, and especially schools, etc. So as far as our my think tank is concerned, Prajna Initiative, which is based on the concept of physics, we use colors and diagrams. And in colors, for example, an Olympian would be who's scoring amazingly in sports, but is not doing very well in math. But like a heroic student would be somebody who will we'll grade them in violet, and that child is a super child, but he's not doing very well in sports. So it's very easy, you make it very simple by doing all these things. So I guess my basic concern right now is that, as simple as possible, we have to spread it in Africa, all these new technology, etc., and so that the best possible solution to the world problems come about, so that wars do not happen. And the best part of our, the climate issues need to be raised, so that otherwise next generations would not be existing. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Donald. What's your concluding remarks?
Sorry, I had to unmute there. Well, I think in some ways it's already here that it's useful to look at. You can get some sorts of ideas. I don't know how many people are familiar with the Eurovision contest, which is basically a television show that exists in Europe, where there's a battle of the bands between the best bands from every country, who they basically work their way up until they become the representative of the national bands. And people all over Europe use their cell phones to vote on which one is the best. One year the Finns won because this group dressed up as they dressed up as a heavy metal band. They were from Rovaniemi. And they were just absolutely outrageous, and everybody thought they were fabulous. And some people, a lot of it's just kind of Euro pop and isn't very good, but what the heck. But it is wildly popular. I mean, it's as popular, maybe even more popular than soccer games. I mean, every single pub is packed to the gills with people watching this and voting on it. It's amazing. I've been there twice during Eurovision, and it's absolutely all-consuming. But you think about that, what happens is you have to get feedback from that many people. You can't really have real interaction. I mean, it's interactive, and it is interactive in the sense that the individual people are voting, but the bands can't respond to the individual people. And so there's always going to be kind of a technical threshold of how many people can interact with the content provider. And that's the way TikTok works, is that the content provider puts out their content, and then people interact with it by making comments on it. They do interact because the content provider often then makes the next piece of content responding to the content. The watch party thing that they're doing on Facebook and other kinds of places, people select a group of their own size, where they can interact with each other and actually talk about the show as it's going on and discuss it while it's going on. So those are a couple of levels that are really worth watching, because those are things that are, kind of the precursor to what's going to be, an indicator of probably how things are going to play out. I want to say that we do have an issue, and it's not a technical issue. It's really a philosophical issue. And interestingly enough, if you look at the amount of money that people who have degrees in philosophy makes, it's in the top 10. They make not that much less than engineers. So don't necessarily not get a degree in philosophy just because you're not going to make any money, weirdly enough. And so how is it that we're going to decide what content is appropriate or not? I mean, there's a kind of a libertarian view that whatever anybody says is going to be okay, but we can see how destructive that is, because if people are putting out content that is absolutely not true, and people are ganging up to attack people who are actually putting out content that's basically scientifically based, it's based on actual research and evidence and things like that, and that content doesn't appear, but instead content that's based on, it's going to be even easier to create fantasy worlds that are completely separate from each other. And I think that's kind of the positive and negative aspect of it. We'll be able to have educational things that are like the watch parties, where professors or whatever can actually teach. The students can give feedback. We can have all kinds of things. We can have wonderful things like I'm seeing with TikTok, where we can explore worlds that we've never been able to explore before and actually ask questions and all kinds of wonderful things on the one hand. But then people can also convince you to buy things that you don't need. They can create fantasy worlds and sell them as if they're the real world, which is getting to be a kind of a problem in the world, in society right now. I mean, Facebook has been getting in trouble because they've actually stoked revolution. People have stoked revolutions where people have died in countries because of this fantasy worlds that they've created. But how can you change that? I mean, what's fair to change that? I mean, it's a philosophical question. What is greatest good for the greatest number of people actually mean? How do you decide what's good? How do you decide these things? They're not simple questions, and we don't really have the answers to them. So I think it's something that we need to be willing to use a trial and error, but acknowledge that it's something that we need to put into the mix for social television to have a better world.
Can I just say that I wish my father were around to hear what you just said about philosophy? He complained that I was studying philosophy in college and wondered if I was going to open a philosophy store. But
Okay.
I'm just saying.
Okay.
I guess even the last person shouldn't be harmed. I guess that is what I would like to say. Not even the last person should be harmed. Be the poorest or be even if a rich person is being discriminated because of some reasons, they might just come up with something for sure. So, even the last person should not be harmed.
Thank you everyone. This is excellent discussions. Thank you, Professor David Schumacher, Mr. Tom Rose, Professor Rob, Professor David Kelly, Madam Tamanna, and Professor Donald for joining today's session. I want to add few sentences. Social television, this is the new concept, and I know I'm from academy. I know many guardians, they feel threat with the social media activities and everything, but there are many good things in social media, many good content, many good activities actually happening in social media. So we already sharing our content to the academy, the policymakers, and the corporation. They are utilizing World Talent Economy Forum content for their policy development, for their public-private partnership, for startup ecosystem developments, for minimizing gap in between developed nations and developing nations. This is the way actually World Talent Economy Forum we are actually trying to develop a better ecosystem, but we need more help, more support for with better technology, with better I want to say with better people, with better corporations. How and we need a lot of solution actually. So that is the way we can work. And beside that, I just want to say that knowledge economy is very important. Knowledge economy extremely important for the developing nations. Whatever the economical system we have to be very much focused on knowledge economy, and we need to focus on how we can develop knowledgeable person. That's why regularly I bring all of the talented person and knowledgeable person from around the world. Our audience can see Mr. David Schumacher, David Kelly, Tom Rose, Mr. Rob, Professor Donald, Madam Tamanna. All of our speakers actually highly knowledgeable person. So just follow their guideline. That just follow that. If you set a good example that I want to be like Mr. Tom, or I want to be like Mr. David Kelly, or I want to be like Mr. Rob, that's it. You can change your life, because mentorship is very important every time. So that's why we always bring the great scholars in World Talent Economy Forum, and I want to give special thanks to all of our speakers for your continuous support. And I request all of our audience, please share our content with your government, with your corporation, with your academy. And how we getting support from the millions of people from the grassroots level. I'm sure our speakers will join. We will arrange conference. We will arrange some good solution for the developing nation. Thank you. Bye bye and take care.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sharif. See you next time. Bye.
Bye.
Bye bye.